and Startup India. And before we begin, I would like to quickly thank our partners, our session partner, Refinitiv, our gold partner, Reacta, our bronze partner, Onfido, and our knowledge partner, EY. With that, let us now commence with our next session. This session is a panel discussion on the topic tokenization paving the way for secure payments. And for the same, I would like to welcome our esteemed panelists, our moderator, Mr. Zubin Tafti, Director Payments Transformation, PwC India, Mr. Arvind Ronta, Vice President, Head of Products, India and South Asia, Visa, Mr. Sheetal Lalwani, Chief Operating Officer, Juspay, Mr. Sumit Agarwal, SVP Payments and Fintech, Makemytrip-Goibibo Group, and Mr. Ravi Dadla, Head, Digital Products, Mastercard South Asia. We welcome all of you. Thank you for joining in today. And I would now request Mr. Tafti to please take over. Thank you.
Thanks, Garima. Thanks for that. And welcome, everyone. Glad to see everyone here and happy to be part of this panel and moderating an esteemed set of panelists. We'll spend the first few minutes just doing a quick intro for everyone. So I'm Zubin. I'm a Director in Payments Transformation in PwC. My broad mandate is to do a lot of work in business development, delivering projects that we work with a lot of the fintech and the payment tech ecosystem. And the other mandate of mine is to take our consulting services across our network firms across the globe. With that as an introduction, I'll kind of hand it over. Maybe Arvind, you could go next for a quick round.
Thanks. This is our products and
Okay, so Arvind, I'm not sure if it was just me, but I'm kind of breaking up on the audio.
Yes.
Maybe,
So
yeah.
I would just suggest if you would want to switch off your video, Mr. Ronta, and then speak, probably it would work because we're not able to hear you. Or else, Zubin, sir, if you want to take the others first and then go back.
Yeah, I think maybe Ravi, you could go next, and then we'll come back to you, Arvind.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ravi Datla. I head digital product solutions for Mastercard South Asia. Part of my mandate is to drive digital solutions for this market, some of them being tokenization solutions. I drive a lot of digital first programs, be it digital credential issuance, digital journeys for customers, the onboarding journeys, and various other solutions that we take to both banks and fintechs. Part of the mandate is also to drive a lot of digital payment experience for the end customers. It is through our partners, merchant partners, acquirer partners, and the payment aggregator partners. The job is to enhance the entire customer experience and also improve security and safety of these transactions. Thanks, Juven, for having me on the panel.
Sure, thanks, Ravi. Sheetal, over to you. I think.
I take care of business development and I'm a co-founder here at Juspay. Juspay's core value prop is about improving the experience of payments for large enterprises. We pretty much take care of their end-to-end payments orchestration and their operations, and we work very closely in bringing some of the innovative solutions to the market, especially in payments security and experience. Visa SafeClick was one of them, and also on UPI.
Yeah, Sumit, over to you.
Thanks, Zubin. So I had payments for payment product for both Makemytrip and Goibibo, the two brands for GoMMT Group, where part of the responsibility is to ensure that we have the right kind of customer experience across all pay modes. And that's where tokenization fits in. Card payment is one of the large use cases for businesses like us. And the other head that I wear is heading the fintech offshoot for the group, which is called TripMoney, where again we are building a lot of products around travel loan, insurances, forex, right, card payments and stuff like that. Thank you so much. Very happy to be part of this panelist group.
Sure, Sumit, thank you. So I think Arvind is kind of fixing his technical problem, and I believe he should be back with us in a bit. With that, maybe let's just get started and kind of I would say first, maybe I can ask Ravi for you to step in to kind of let our audiences know exactly, what is tokenization and how does it, additionally secure card payments as they existed, prior to tokenization. And if you could throw some light on the process and kind of what does it really do?
Zubin, I think to start off, let me set a little context of why are we even talking tokenization, right? Fundamentally, there is post-COVID, we do see a lot of research and data, especially there's one research by Interpol that very clearly tells that the cybercrime is shifting its focus from individuals and small SMEs towards enterprises. So there is a significant risk of attack that is coming our way as an ecosystem. And fundamentally, I mean, all of us have got great technology with respect to securing our database. Everyone invests quite a bit of money into it. And should we really be bothered at this point, right? I see there are two things to it. Especially in our environment, there are two kinds of data that we end up storing, right? One is the payment data, which is the card credentials and everything else that goes along with it. And then comes your personal data. Now, when these two data independently are sitting in different environments, the risk is significantly minimized. Versus if they both sit in the same environment and there is a potential hack that happens at an enterprise level, that is where the customers' payment credentials and accounts are at a significant risk. So we see the government and the regulator has set certain direction and certain guidelines for us to, as an industry, to find some solutions to solve it. So tokenization is one such solution that comes into picture. And I'll just summarize what tokenization is. In as layman language as I can speak, tokenization is nothing but a proxy value that you replace your card credential, primarily the 16-digit card number that you use in the entire transaction flow. That is replaced with a proxy number, which is specific to a certain merchant and also can only be rehashed into the original number only by the entities that are providing these solutions with certain cryptographic algorithms to ensure the security is at the highest standards. Even a single card transaction hack cannot really reveal the credentials of the customer. So just to simplify it, it is a proxy that is coming into picture.
Sure. Thanks, Ravi. Arvind, let me just check if you're back. We were just asking in terms of any baseline conversation around what is tokenization, if you can add, and maybe a small quick intro about yourself, because last time we didn't hear it.
Sure. Thanks, Zubin. Hey, everyone, this is Arvind Ronta, and I lead our products and solution in India and South Asia for Visa. So glad to be here. This is an important topic for the industry. So tokenization, I would explain this as something that devalues the card number. And I think the explanation that Ravi was giving, I think, you could replace the sensitive card credentials with a tokenized value. And that's what tokenization enables. It's not a new technology, actually. It's a very globally accepted and very globally driven through EMVCo standard. It's interoperable across all networks, across different card rails and account rails. Tokenization is a very, very proven technology and a concept which has been around for a long time. And tokenization is domain control. I think that's one of the important things about this technology, that the token is unique in how it's issued to a merchant or a token requester. So what does that mean is that token can only be used at the same merchant and for that specific use case. So in case a token is hacked, it cannot be used elsewhere. And I think that's the crux of this technology, which makes it both friendly from a security standpoint as well as the multiple use cases it creates in digital. I think that's Visa. We have deployed tokenization in 87 countries. It's a well accepted technology and offline use case.
Sure, Arvind. Thanks for that. I mean, that leads me to my next question in terms of, given it's a proven technology, given it's something that the current regulations have indicated for it to be a potential solution, with the current ban on, card on file as being one of the key areas. It begs to ask the question, so what does it take, for this industry to move to this? I mean, there are, in the card world, we have the issuers, the acquirers, and I believe this has a lot of impact also to do with, the end merchants. And then this is where I'll pull maybe, Sumit in for the merchant perspective, or Sheetal, and then maybe, Arvind, why don't you help me on the, issue acquirer onboarding, and what does that entail typically? How long does it take, and how complicated it is?
Sure. Thanks, Zubin. So basically, from a merchant perspective, I mean, Ravi and Arvind, both of them have very rightly summarized what tokenization is, right? And this is nothing new. In India, we are yet to implement it. Now, from a merchant point of view, see, while tokenization is mostly referred to a solution where the creator of token has to be the network, right? Creator and owner of token has to be the network. From a merchant point of view, I think we just look at it a little more broadly, which means that anybody who has a token management service and is approved by a regulator to be the provider to the merchants can technically become a tokenization service provider, right? Now, what are these options? Obviously, the first and the foremost option is the network. They are part of the authentication process, they are in the payment process, and hence they are rightly placed to actually take care of the tokenization process. But apart from that, who else, right? If we look at acquirer, even the CyberSource or Mix of the world are globally providing tokenization services, right? Close to India, in Bangladesh itself, right? We can see Bcash is on acquirer-based tokenization. We have banks who can technically become the vault provider. They can become the tokenizer. Now, each of these comes with their own merits and demerits. If you have to choose among these, I think time will tell, but broadly, there will be few parameters that will help us decide, right? One, who is in the forefront? Who can help in customer education? Now, if network is there wherein they can help customer learn about tokenization and move to the new way of making payment, maybe an OTP-less or any other kind of payment, maybe they are rightly placed. But what about the technical capabilities, right? What is the latency? What are the success rates, right? So those things will be decided. And from a merchant point of view, we take care of a lot of innovation as well, right? And hence a solution which is far more flexible, wherein we have an ability to take care of routing on our own, right? And not be stuck with a particular provider is also very critical. In short, I think network is rightly placed to take care of all of these as long as we come up with a universal solution around it.
Thanks, Sumit. Sheetal, any points from a merchant perspective you would like to add in?
Yeah, Zubin. So if I have to just simply summarize, you said, right, how do you activate the ecosystem so that tokenization becomes quite prevalent, right? I think one line would be wherever the 16-digit card numbers used to flow. And card rails, card infrastructure is a very well-established infrastructure. It's something which has been set up over the last 2-3 decades. And technology changes every 3-4 years now. So you can imagine, right? So there'll be systems which depend on a 16-digit card number. And some of the semantics which go with it, like the first 6 digits, identify the bin. So I think there are some nuances to how, because we've set up with this system for the last few decades, you have to ensure that things roll out smoothly, right? I think that sort of, for me, summarizes the challenges. So everyone, while the networks do a great job of ensuring, the issuers may not feel a big impact of it. It's possible that they do the translation. Everyone upstream, the payment gateways, the acquirers, providers like us, and then of course some merchants who do it themselves will need to, because a lot of operations, a lot of other insights might have been built into card fraud management, offer management, right? EMI plans, and a lot of these things have been built around some of those things. You just have to ensure those things go out smoothly. But I think the entire ecosystem is pushing towards that now, because of course the benefits it brings with it. Over to you, Arvind or Ravi.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can go to Arvind first, and then Ravi. So you must have heard both sides because you deal with the issuers and the acquirers. So What are you hearing from them, and how is the adoption journey been so far, and what else is happening to make it a lot more easy for everyone to onboard?
See, we do have an approval today by RBI on device-bound tokenization, right? So RBI had approved contactless tap to pay, in-app payments, QR use cases in 2019. The limitation is that it's only this approval is conditional for device-bound token requesters. So what does that mean? It means that card on file tokenization is still not approved, which is a massive use case for e-commerce use case, right? So all our e-commerce card on file or credentials on file will benefit from tokenization once card on file tokenization approval comes through. But in terms of where the ecosystem is today, we have large players like Samsung Pay, JioPay, Google Pay. They're all commercially live basis the last RBI approval for device-based tokenization. Paytm is on its journey to getting launched. Overall, there are 14 to 15 large issuers who are live in India on tokenization. They represent roughly around 80% of card volume or payments volume from a coverage standpoint. So it's a fairly robust ecosystem on the issuing side, which is ready. And then there are long tail of issuers coming on as Google Pay, Samsung Pay takes off. A lot of these other issuers are coming on board. But I think the inflection point for tokenization would really be in card on file tokenization, because e-commerce is a top use case, and on all issuers want their customers to be able to use their issued cards on large e-com marketplaces at their preferred merchants, and to be able to do that across merchants. I think we'll see even the long tail participation of issuers accelerate. But having said that, as I said earlier, from global context, there are 87 countries which have been using tokenization. There are close to 6,500 issuers who've used it. At Visa, we have issued 2 billion token. So 2 billion tokens have been issued worldwide. So which tells you that that the momentum and the proven technology it is. It's only hopefully a matter of time that we see all forms of use cases, including e-commerce, to be enabled on tokenization in India. But the baseline ecosystem is already primed up, because RBI had approved in 2019 the device-bound tokenization, on the backs of which a lot of the issuers and large merchants have started to get ready. The qualifier is that they are in-app merchants, and there's a whole range of use cases and merchants who are not in-app, who are browser based, and they can't use tokenization today until the COF token approval comes through.
Sure, thanks, Arvind, for that. So it begs me to ask another question, and again, Ravi, to you.
Yeah.
Given the global context, I know in India it's app-based. It went with that license or that permission, right? And did not open it up for everyone. How does that compare to what's happened globally? Is it done in a similar way in other countries, or is it more relevant to how India has done it? And the second question is, like in India, there are solutions that are being evaluated or looked at on the acquiring or merchant side to look at vaulting or tokenization as possible solutions. Have you seen that? Have you seen that happen somewhere in the globe, as in addition to your network-based tokenized issue tokens?
So Zubin, let me set some context with respect to the overall segment of merchants that we are trying to solve for, right? Technically, there's 40% of transactions happening on the app, 60% still happens on web in India. Again, that's a number that is moving fast. We've got four kinds of merchants that we're talking about in the ecosystem. One is large global merchants, likes of Amazon, Googles of the world, who've done a lot of implementations globally and operating in India. Then you got large Indian merchants, Makemytrip, Flipkarts of the world, primarily focused, built, stack, primarily focused in India. Then you got players like the Paytm, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, and others who've already implemented the 2019 circular of RBI, where they've solved for in-app transactions using tokenization. Then comes the entire long tail of merchants. Now, we as an industry need to be looking at the readiness on these fronts, right? And I'll talk about the first segment a little detail, the global guys. Globally, tokenization, there have been certain markets where the regulator has been pushing for it, but also tokenization has also been a significant convenience product in a lot of markets. We see a lot of merchants proactively implementing the solution, and the adoption is in some of the countries up to 80%, 90% of them adopted without really a mandate from the regulator. Fundamentally, it improves the security, and also we've seen that the overall approval rates and the authentication approval rates have spiked somewhere between 6 to 10% in a lot of markets. So globally, not many countries have mandated it. It is a convenience product, but in the context of India, with the kind of guideline that RBI has, we have a significant opportunity to upshift the security of the entire ecosystem, at the same time the convenience and the experience for the end customer. So just adding to that last point that you're talking about, multiple solutions being available globally, right? As I said, sometimes just the network solution might not really solve for the entire ecosystem, right? There we need to leave some leave some scope for innovation. There could be certain products someone else could come up with solutions. The only caveat that I want to put there is, given the timelines that we have with a mandate and a deadline, these network provided solutions are well tested. They work at scale, like Arvind was talking about, close to 90 countries implemented. All major ones, especially large merchants, would have already done it. Let's say an Amazon in India wouldn't have to do the additional effort. Obviously, there are merchants in India that have to do the additional effort. So we as an ecosystem can chalk out a plan from a go-to-market point of view in terms of the heavy lifting that needs to be done. But from a technology point of view, network tokenization is well proven and works in a lot of regions across the world.
Thanks, Ravi, and thanks for that. I think it was interesting to see that, in India, we're seeing almost 80% of the volumes are enabled on the issuing side. On the acquiring side, yes, this current circular restriction on, app pays only is where we are at. There is a push now completely to remove card on file across all types of merchants, and that's where I think the gap needs to be filled in terms of enabling tokenization for those merchants. And that brings me to the question. I would say maybe Sheetal, you can help with that answer. Is or maybe I think Sumit, because you did bring up that point of looking at alternative solutions where you can vaulting or whatever tokenization of that 16-digit PAN can be done at your end. I'm just going back a step and trying to understand one of the reasons that the regulation today, a regulator today said, card on file not to be kept around in this domain of, the acquiring side or the merchant side, is because there have been, breaches and there have been a lot of information that has been lost in terms of people's PANs and things like that. And I think to alleviate that, they thought that let's use a mechanism or a solution where this PAN is only completely eliminated, right? And therefore the use of that token. Now, in your solutions, how do you address this problem of, because if the solution is at your end, then also the detokenization or the mapping of the token with the PAN would stay in this domain and continue to stay in this domain. So how would you look to kind of alleviate that problem or that risk in that solution?
Sure. So Zubin, first of all, let me, if I was not very clear, let me correct. I think, see, we are not even allowed, right? So a merchant can not even do it, irrespective of what tech we build, right? Because from a regulation standpoint, it's very, very clear, and I think it is only correct from an RBI's point of view, saying that if every merchant start doing it, then the data is still fragmented. It is there multiple servers all across India, and the risk continues, right? So I don't think we meant that as a merchant we can do it, right? What I meant was anybody who is allowed under the regulation, right? And who could these be? Network, for sure, both Ravi and Arvind has rightly pointed out, network tokenization comes with a lot of benefits, right? But there are acquirer-based tokenizations, right? Which is maybe a cyber source solution, which is there in many countries, right? There are banks who are coming up with token vaults, right? And flexible solutions. So the point that I was trying to cover is that network tokenization seems to be far ahead of any other solution, but time will tell as to what will work out. There can be multiple solutions that can coexist, right? But definitely it is not the merchants. Zubin, you are on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks for that, Sumit. Thanks for clarifying that in terms of the solutions. And yes, I think the point that you made about time is of the essence sometimes. Currently, the regulations was extended, and now it's at the end of the year. That still leaves barely a few months to comply for the industry, and that's an uphill task that I think the industry is working towards. Moving on to the other transaction type, which seems to be, I think, of a lot of prevalence in India and is picking up, is the entire repeat and subscription based tokens. And this is where also card on file plays a very important role, because it just makes it life a lot more easier to be able to manage those recurring transactions. So with that as the backdrop, could you, Sheetal, could you help me understand that what are the solutions that you're looking to adopt where you're able to facilitate this with the current regulations in place? And then later on, maybe I'll move on to either Arvind or Ravi to talk about from a scheme perspective or from a network perspective, how do we manage tokenizing all these cards that already exist card on file, or is there a different way? Because I know a regulator had put two-factor also as a mandate, at least for the first request. So how do we really kind of solve this for the industry is something what I'd like to understand. And Sheetal, maybe you can go ahead from the merchant side of things, the acquiring side of things, and then I can come back to Arvind on the network. Yeah.
Sure, Zubin. To break down the problem a little bit, right? With respect to subscription payments, I think there's two concepts here. One is the credential getting devalued into a token, and then there's this customer control, customer notification requirement, which RBI wants. The intent of the regulator is that the consumer is in control. Right now, it's more about the consumer is aware, right, that a debit is going to happen and all of that. So I think from both angles, the first one is very clear, right? Semantically or theoretically, wherever you're using a 16-digit PAN for subscription, you should be able to use a token. I think what it does is it in fact adds a little bit more security now, right? That this token could be specific to a mandate which you're giving. A subscription is nothing but a mandate which you provide so that money can be automatically debited. And since a token could be uniquely generated for a mandate, now you could say that if there's something wrong with the mandate, which you want to cancel, which you want to pause or something, you could actually do that pretty seamlessly. Again, semantically, I'm not fully sure. I've not seen this in the sense how the platform works. You could actually let the customer only work with this token, this mandate token, and leave all his other transactions which are tied to the card go on smoothly, right? So to me, just like tokenization added benefits for one-time transactions, it has this potential to do that. And you could actually bake some of the semantics of a mandate into the token, right? The limits, the expiry period, the frequency, right? Because if you think about it, it's a set of rules, ID, password, this is my frequency and all of that. All that could be baked into a token. So that way, a lot of innovation is also possible using this token. The fact that you can do domain scoping and then other factors can be scoped into the token. I hope that made things a little clearer here.
Yeah, Sheetal, I think that was pretty insightful and interesting, because I'd like to understand now from this scheme of network providers, is this something that one can be done? Has it been done in other countries? Or happy to hear your views on that. Maybe Arvind, you could go first.
Yeah, I think so. A couple of things. I think just to go back to your question, one, in the way in our market, because 2FA mandate right? So first question would be, is tokenization compliant with 2FA? So a short answer is yes. They're in tokenized transaction flows, 2FA would just work like it works on PAN flows, or standard card transaction flows. I think the area of friction that might be and that needs to be resolved is that the current circular only approves, um, you know, a consent-based approach. In other words, a customer consent has to be given to tokenize a device-bound credential, which is currently approved by RBI. I think the challenge in e-commerce and card on file generally broadly is that large marketplaces have up to 60% of credentials on file as dormant. In other words, they may not be active. It could be some, a subscription I've taken to watch a movie in a platform which is not my primary platform, or I bought something on a platform, but I've got my credential on the platform, but I'm not as actively engaged to keep checks, and so I'm a dormant user. The challenge is you use a consent-based approach, and that tokenization works on both consent-based as well as bulk-based approaches globally. The challenge is that you add a friction. You have a lot of people like me. If I'm a dormant user, I will not give a consent to change my, clear PAN token because I'm not engaged with that platform as an example, or that merchant as an example. I think globally what we've seen is um, there's this thing called as a bulk tokenization capability where all credentials, active, inactive, can be tokenized. And I think it's very important because it's not so much about just the friction and customer experience, but it's also proofing that the merchant platform is only storing tokens, regardless of whether it's an active or a dormant user. So I think this is something we have seen in other markets, where it's a very, very preferred way of tokenizing, adds less friction to the customer, as well as it secures the merchant platforms by tokenizing all credentials. And then I second what Sheetal said on the recurring transactions. I think, see, there are two different mandates: SI, or standing instruction, clear guideline. It's a clear timeline we have in front of us. I think that is already in motion, where issuer and the merchant ecosystem is getting ready for the recurring transactions to comply with the RBI mandate. I think the next evolution would be that all these recurring transactions are also token ready. So I think that's globally, that's exactly how it works. In most mature markets in all those many countries, those recurring transactions are done on tokenized credentials. So I think the leap from the standing instruction to tokenization would not be that big, because if your underlying card on file is tokenized, then those same recurring transactions are now being done on a tokenized credential, which makes it much more secure and a better experience for customers.
Thanks, Arvind. Ravi, from your side, anything else to add on that?
Well, I think Arvind has covered most of it. I'll just dwell on a couple of points, right? We got to really understand why the second factor authentication for token creation exists today, right? As part of the 2019 circular. That is primarily because the use case that we're talking as part of 2019 circular is tap and pay, where a transaction can be done without a second factor authentication for the tap and pay transactions. Earlier it was 2,000, now the limit is up to 5,000. But in case of card on file tokenization, every transaction, the payment transaction, will anyways be mandated by a second factor authentication. So we can do away without a second factor authentication, just talking from a technical and security point of view. Now, the second and the most important one, as Arvind was also mentioning, is the consent. Right now, consent is obviously a tricky subject with the entire data privacy policies and stuff. But one viewpoint that we could take, a balanced viewpoint we could take, is today the merchants, when they save the cards, anyways take the consent from the customer to save the card. So technically, we could write on the same consent and convert it into a token, and then ensure there is no security breach, because even if every PAN is converted into a token, they cannot be utilized until the second factor authentication comes in to do a transaction. So we could do a bulk tokenization implementation. That's the only way that we've managed to migrate. So I think across both the networks, we'll have at least 500 to 600 million cards saved across various merchant platforms in this country. If you got to move all of them to a new platform or a new solution, you got to do it bulk. Otherwise, if we'll have to start from scratch and the funnel is going to drop heavy. It is going to create a lot of friction and also a security risk, because if, I mean, just as an example, right? If today, at least on all the large merchants, my card credentials are saved, I'm not entering again and again. But if I were forced to do a new consent and enter my card credentials again to convert them into tokens, I am at risk of phishing. I mean, today, even most mature people like us can fall for these websites, which is very easy to replicate any website today, right? You end up missing, and with all the digital boosts that you get on marketing, the very easy ways for the cyber attacks to happen on individuals like us.
Sure, thanks, Ravi. That's an interesting perspective, especially given the time. If everybody has to move, bulk seems to be a potential way to do it. I think they need to iron out some of those nitty-gritties that you mentioned on consent. Also, I think an important thing is, intimation, because currently the regulator on everything has said, I initially was says intimate for everything, and then now it's like give control to customers. But in the intimation, when you do tokenization, I imagine, I know I must have saved my card in a lot of sites which I today don't use. And overnight, over a period, I suddenly get these messages, your card has been tokenized on XYZ. I'll be like, wow, what's happening? So I think these things need to be kind of ironed out. But yes, I think everybody's thinking they need to find a solution for this to move quickly. Or maybe there could be staggered approaches that might come into play. I would say that, where for everyone that comes in for a new transaction, there is a new journey for him or her. And then maybe that after that, that fellow's card is, no more on file or something like that. But I think the regulation is pretty strict on after a particular date it not being there. But let's see how that plays out. Okay, so then I'll move on to another angle, which is becoming more and more, I would say, relevant and critical, which is, I would say, customer experience. I mean, the experience of the payment journey for a customer is becoming, sacrosanct. Is becoming who has the better experience ends up having the, lower dropout rates and better checkouts, and all of that is very critical. And I think that's an area that tokenization might also impact or change, because some customers would need to follow a different journey or look at things differently. So just from that perspective, and maybe I can pull you in first, Sumit, from your users, especially on the travel side. How would that work out? And then maybe Sheetal, I think you have a mix of a lot of different merchants that you cater to. How do they see this experience, getting impacted or not getting impacted, for that matter, when tokenization becomes a reality in a few months?
Sure, Zubin. I mean, very rightly said. Yeah, customer experience is like the most important part of this entire chain, and merchant platforms being the place where the customers will enter these card details, right? We have to be that much more cognizant that this has to be set right, right? Now, I believe, see, on day one, because the second factor doesn't go away, nothing much is going to change for customers if they're doing their first transaction using a card number, right? They will still enter and save. At the back, network will create a token. It will move between various parties and the transaction will be successful. But the beauty of tokenization is that I think this is a seminal moment where if tokenization is rightly implemented in India, card payment can go through a boom, which is like significant, right? And why would that be? Primarily, again, because of customer experience, right? If I look at it, again, on day one, tokenization will solve for various kind of risk declines, right? So the issuer appetite to approve a transaction will be higher in a scenario which is device bound, user bound, or merchant bound. At the same time, all the cases of card expiry will go away, right? So customers will not have to come delete their cards, re-enter the expiry details, and all of these can be handled by tokenization. And as we progress, I believe the real fun of tokenization will be when we can get rid of the decade-old OTP, right? I mean, that second factor of authentication, which is not dominated, which is actually a telecom-dependent authentication factor, is not really required in today's technology. And as long as we can do tokenization in the right way and move to a very silent authentication, which is the token, this will be a paramount shift in the overall customer experience. So from that perspective, I think customer experience will only improve as customers' trust in this entire tokenization increases.
Thanks, Sumit. Sheetal, from your side, anything to add?
Sure. Yeah, Zubin. I think echoing a lot of what Sumit said, right? A lot of it shouldn't change for the consumer, for that matter. Taking a step back, payments is all about fraud and friction. That's the duel you're constantly fighting, right? The more you increase friction, which is through 2FA or whatever, you can bring down fraud. The reduce the friction you can roll. But I think India is the place where we are innovating a lot by bringing frictionless authentication. I think that's where tokenization steps in, because again, abstractly speaking, credentials should not be guessable, should not be reversible, should not be reusable, and short-lived. Ideally, those are the good qualities of credentials, and tokenization scores highly in many of these dimensions, right? So the security aspect of using a tokenization itself increases, and hence, because there's lesser chances of fraud, you could also make it more frictionless. Just to add to this a little bit more, given that a lot of mobile transactions are happening, and mobile phones are also bringing in another aspect which is fundamental to payment security, which actually sits at the heart of what Sumit said, right? This telecom dependent. OTP is nothing but verifying your SIM card. Basically, you have a SIM, the SIM has a secret key, and that key is verified, right? By sending you it's just a reverse way of verifying, but that's what it does. Phones nowadays have something called as a hardware secure element. So it is something which sits parallel to a SIM card on your phone, which is accessible to you. You can't really do much with a SIM card other than get an OTP and then validate it, right? So if you combine tokenization with hardware secure element, you could actually do, you're increasing security manyfold, and you're also doing it silent, truly silent authentication. I think that's where the magic is going to start happening. I think India is moving rapidly towards it. It is probably going to happen in the next couple of years, where you're going to start seeing both coming together to bring this kind of security and frictionless experiences.
Thanks, Sumit. I think that's a good point you made on the secure element, whether on mobile or on virtual or whatever, and how that can be used. I think that's an important angle to look at. Excellent. There was a question about vaultless tokenization that came from the audience and it being available in India. I'm not sure if there's anybody in the panel who would like to volunteer to take that. Okay, so I can read it out. It says,
is the question, oh, sorry, what is the question? Is around the vaultless tokenization or vaulted tokenization?
It reads, is vaultless tokenization available in India? At a particular bank secure transactions, we provide vaultless tokenization as per the latest security standards through public clouds, either AWS, Azure, and data center solutions. We are implementing this solution in multiple geographies. So there's a global bank that's doing it, and they're saying, is that something that they can use in India to comply?
Yeah, so I think they're probably referring to cloud-based tokenization. So that does exist. I think globally, most frameworks, including at Visa, we also have a cloud-based tokenization framework. So yeah, in short, yes, at scale, e-commerce be.
Arvind, sorry, I'm losing your audio again. Put your video off. Okay, we'll wait for Arvind to come back. I think we're kind of in the home stretch in terms of 5 minutes left. So I think let's do a quick one question for everybody, round robin wise. Is what is that one thing that you would want, for India, or that you need, whether it's from regulations, from the industry, from players, whatever, that you believe kind of will pave the way for tokenization to become the solution, for secure payments, which is what is the intended objective. So what is that thing you would like to change or would like it to be introduced or clarity to be provided that you believe will help with this journey? Let me start with Ravi, and then we'll kind of go as I see the names on the screen.
Well, Zubin, so I'll take it as a four-step approach, right? Our path forward. First is to find that clarity with RBI with respect to how do we solve for the entire ecosystem, while currently it's restricted to devices. Second, I think the biggest important piece us as an ecosystem I will have to figure out is within the deadline, we got to secure the COF. COF, I think, is an asset created by each merchant over a long period of time. It's an important journey for the customer, very active set of customers. We got to secure that COF and then find the solutions to solve for the transaction flows in compliance with the RBI guidelines, with second factor authentication, without second factor authentication. How do we do it? And then I think the last one is to invest in customer education, right? We got to build, as an ecosystem, we got to improve the entire experience for the customer and also help him transition in places where there is transition. Most places we believe the customer will not see a lot of difference. It will just be minor enhancements in UI UX. But wherever there is need for educating the customer, we got to do that. So I see these four steps as our path forward to achieve what Sumit and Sheetal were talking about, where India is at the crisp of getting the best of checkout experience on the card rails.
Thanks, Ravi. Sheetal, over to you.
Yeah, Ravi took four. I think the card on file tokenization. And we strongly feel about the hardware secure element. I think that's untapped. India is a mobile first country. We do a lot of transactions. The mobile phone is an extension of our thing. See, and it also goes to the same concept of decentralized credentials, right? That is the whole thing. You don't want credentials to be aggregated in one place. Trust us. We understand the challenges with it, right? So when the credential moves further to the edge, it's completely decentralized. And you have a secure, the secure element is like a HSM, which we talk, right? Now it's become such a commodity. Soon it should be there in 75, 80% of the phones. Just think if you could do, and it's not just flashy, right? You actually use your biometric. Touch ID does that. It's a crypto vault. Your biometric opens the vault and you get an essence of the secret. It's beautiful actually that way, right? A secret is born within the crypto vault, which never leaves it, and it also gives you the essence every time. So for me, I know I'm going a little bit beyond tokenization. It's more about payments security, which I'm talking about, right? If you have to ask me, I think hardware secure element and of course devalued credentials.
Thanks, Sheetal. I think that sparks one. There was another thing I was working on little around on identity, and the SSI model, the self-sovereign identity model, is a lot of that decentralization of control given to a lot of stakeholders, and I see your point there. Sumit, over to you in terms of what is that thing you would like to fix, change, improve, get clarity on so that the industry can really move forward and get this done well.
Sure. So Zubin, two things. One, both Ravi and Sheetal has covered, right? I think it is very, very critical that we migrate what has been created in the last multiple years, right? Important to migrate. Second most critical thing is, again, we need to have a solution for browser, right? Today, we are all talking about mobile device-based tokenization, but desktop PWA, whether it is through a plugin, whether it is through a Chrome extension, whether it is through a Java SDK, whatever the form is, and it has to be regulator approved. Because if it is not there, then it is only job half done. And it will lead to a lot of confusion among customers, among merchants, right? And a battle only half won. So those are the two things here.
Thanks, Sumit. And lastly, Arvind, over to you. I hope you've got your network sorted.
Yeah. Hey, so I think we should have. So we have a device. Now that we have some comfort with this technology in India, we should really go to the next step, which is card on file tokenization and enable all e-commerce credentials, card on file credentials on tokenization. So I think it does need regulatory clarity. And I think given where we are in the tight timeline we have, we do need to pull the industry together to have a very tight go-to-market plan. So we are all, the entire ecosystem can get ready. And I think the sooner the clarity comes, I think the sooner we can move forward.
Thanks, Arvind, for that. And I think we're just on the time. And I think the key takeaways for me, I think, are yes, the regulatory clarity is an important one. And I think a lot of people are waiting and watching for that clarity and therefore maybe not moving their feet, and the deadline is approaching. And I think that's something that should come in. And as you said, that asset of building out that card on file and being able to move it quickly onto this tokenization way to be able to be used without creating too much of disruption is something an important thing that to look at. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for this interesting conversation. Really insightful inputs from everyone. And thanks once again. Wish everybody else and all a great evening. Girima, over back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tafti, and thank you to all the panelists for joining in today. It was a lovely session despite the hurdles that we had to face technologically. It was a brilliant session, and thank you to the audience as well for posting in your questions. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with yet another exciting session shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.